yung first part. All right. So people, lumalaki yung anxious na word because many of you are responding the same way. So anxious, excited, kinakabahan. Yeah. So as expected, no, as I expected, this election has brought about different and many emotions or feelings in us, no? And it tells us a lot about this process, no? With this very limited sample, I can see naman that there are positive and negative feelings associated with uh, our elections here in the country. And parang in general din naman, parang this is a good estimate of what people really are feeling. So on the one hand, some people are excited. No, I think this is a very historical moment for the country. No, especially with this very high participation of the youth in this process. No, kaya siguro yung may excitement. Hindi pa jaded kagaya ng ibang matatanda. I don't know if you hear it from I don't know your parents or your grandparents, pero many people when they're asked about elections, they just dismiss it and they're no longer excited about it. Even I'm not even sure if they really know the weight of this process to nation building, no, to charting the direction of the country. Many are jaded na parang it's just another day. No? And I think that's a problem that many Filipinos believe that the elections and its impact will just last for about a day. No? That's it. And then they move on with their lives. So that's quite sad, but I can't blame them as well. Kasi I think that's a historical and a systematic problem that you know that has led them to become helpless, hopeless, and apathetic. So, yun. Ano pa bang positive bukod sa excitement? I'm pretty sure there are other positive emotions related to the election. And nakita ko rin yun now because of the participation of the youth. No, a lot of sprinkles of humor for this election, I must say. No, ang daming memes, ang daming mga moments of um, bliss and joy. No, uh, we got to know very interesting personalities and characters and caricatures because of this election. No? So, yeah. Aside from that, we also experienced a lot of hopefulness, no, a lot of optimism, because of increased participation of people, this sense of community, for certain movements within the Philippines and outside. So yeah, meron namang positive side ng elections. Although what's very evident is, of course, the negative side and the negative feelings or emotions attached to the elections. No? So yung sinabi ko kanina, a sense of helplessness and a loss of hope. Um, some people are already, I don't know, it brought up bad things about people, about human beings in general. So there's that, right? So yung aggression, anger. So may pro-social pero meron ding anti-social na mga lumabas because of this process. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to admit that. No? And it's quite sad nga, like, di ba, yesterday, trending yung uh, very unfortunate event of someone taking their own life because of, well, part of the reason is because of the elections, I think, and the character assassination and mudslinging happening between groups and the people within groups, no, individual differences, nga na sinasabi natin. So yun, it's a mix of emotions, and Yeah. So my next question is, have you decided who will you vote for? No, so I'm not specifying if national or anong tawag dito, local, but I'd like to know what factors, reasons, or considerations helped you with your decision, or you could also say that you're still indecisive. No, I'd like to know, as a first-time voter, know how do you decide such things? No, we say na importante yung process na ito. It's very important to participate, but what do you consider? Character, track record, yeah, credentials. All right. Yeah, so this is sort of, I know you guys have been studying hard this sem, pero it feels like this process is also parang siyang literature review din, no? Para din siyang pag-aaral na kailangan mong mag-consult ng sources, no? You need to really scout for information and not just rely on yung easy and digestible pieces of information like what's showered in social media, no? But we need to also acknowledge that for other Filipinos, no, character, credentials, and track record don't matter as much, no, compared to the candidate's lineage, the candidate's religion, the candidate's um, origins, no, place of origin, no. So parang ano, things that are easier to recall, things that are so relatable, yun yung mas ginagamit na basihan ng iba. Um, so yeah, mm, thank you for participating in that short check-in. And should I share this? Yeah, since we started with the different emotions that elections can bring about, now I wanted to share to you some snippets of an article that one of my professors in grad school actually wrote a few days ago in the Inquirer. So I summarized it, and I hope it can help us right now, no? Especially for those people who are feeling a sense of restlessness, uh, are worrying, are very fearful of what will happen on Monday and the outcome following the elections. So you can actually read it on your own, but I sort of um, chose the very relevant parts uh, to give you this, how we can manage election anxiety, especially it, what we have just, what I have just sort of touched on. No? So, una, sabi dun sa article ni Dr. Tuazon, there's no point in premature grief. Uh, as you can see now, many people are already mourning. Many people are hyper vigilant. Many people are very guarded and are grieving already yung results, even if wala pa nga. No, and for very valid reasons as well. No, they know how shaky Philippine politics is, how dodgy, and how it can plant a seed of doubt. But fixating on these emotions will really help you, no? So ang advice dun sa article is we need to radically accept what we have control over. Now, there are many things that is out of your control. Um, and you need to be mindful of those things that you have control over. One of which is you voting, your vote. Diba? Sabi nga nila voting count, your vote counts. And your actions. Your actions in real life and your actions online, not in social media. Those are the things that you have control over and you need to radically accept na ganon yung talagang situation. No? By the way, I'm not, what do you call this? Stealing tong idea ng radically accept, no, or radical acceptance from a candidate. No, I'm not taking this from the vice president's campaign slogan. No, radical acceptance is actually a psychotherapy term. No, it's from a brand of therapy known as acceptance and commitment therapy. Which basically, in a nutshell, what that therapy is advocating for is this. Now, if you want genuine change to occur, if you want changes in your life, if you want changes in your surroundings, that will move you towards wellness, will move you towards positive change. You need to accept certain things about yourself and about your surroundings first. So that's what we mean by radical acceptance. Now, for genuine change to occur, there are certain things that you need to accept. And siguro one of those is the emotions related to the elections. And then the second one is what about the process is am I in control over? So that's my vote and my action. And I really appreciate this part of the opinion that Dr. Tuazon gave. She said, if we're having doubts, we're scared of what will happen, no, we're worried na masasayang effort, no, mapuput to waste yung nakita nating sense of community, of people participating, of people caring for others and for their country. Sabi niya, if your words and actions during this campaign are something that you can be proud of, no? You built a sense of community, you participated, you had meaningful conversations with people, you exercised your rights, you used your privileges for the greater good, then trust in the knowledge that you have done your best. And that's it. Accept na ito yung nangyari and ito yung ginawa mo during this whole time. No, so that for me gives a sense of comfort and relief. Now, all of this will not be put to waste. And if kung ano man ang maging outcome ng elections, if you truly stand by your values and your principles, and if you believe that for a greater country, for a greater country, for us to have a greater country, you need these certain values, these certain actions of community, of caring for others, of loving your neighbors, whatever. Then you have to continue at it, right? Regardless kung ano maging outcome. So yeah. The next one is it'll happen in the next 2 days. So let's not be distracted anymore and focus on what you can do. And yun na nga is gathering information on who you will vote for and then voting. No, yun lang ang sure natin na I will vote. You will be voting on Monday. Yeah. Okay. I understand. Thanks, Shay. So don't get distracted. Focus on what you can do. There are a lot of distractions right now, especially in social media. So Among politicians, the mudslinging continues. Marami pang lalabas ng mga expose, mga sound bites, and whatever dirty politics that they can come up with. So, if you've decided naman na, then lay off. Actually, that's the next one. Lay off from social media. No? Detox from social media. Mute, block, report, repeat. Um, it's a toxic place right now. And I assure you, after the elections on Monday, this next whole week will be even more toxic. So I suggest if you can't handle that type of interaction, no, that type of environment, stay away from social media muna, right? And then another related thing to this is some of you might have conversed and tried to convince certain people to change sides, not to vote for the candidate that appeals to you, that you believe in, but they just put you down, they just dismissed it entirely, no? Hindi kayo magkatugma at magkasulungan talaga kayo. I say na just accept it. Just accept it na you weren't able to change their minds. Now they were so firm on their belief that there was no way for you to convince them, really. So yeah, try to be forgiving of yourself and accept that. And when I say radically accept that some people are just different from us, so that's very statistical, right? Some people we don't jive with, we don't have the same opinions, beliefs, and attitudes as them. And what therapy is, psychology is telling us is radically accept that that is the situation, that these people this are like this. I'm not saying um, I guess my point is acceptance is different from approval, no? Yung pag-accept sa ganong mga klaseng tao at sa mga paninindigan nila at mga paniniwala nila ay hindi ka bawasan sa'yo bilang your own person. No? You can still have your beliefs and values and principles intact while disagreeing with someone. You just accept them for who they are right now, but that doesn't mean you approve that they hold certain beliefs that run against yours. Okay? Pero for now, try to detox from this toxicity. No? So that yeah, you remove outside noise so that your vote truly comes from you. No? By this time, yun nga, you should have enough information that will help you decide and make you have an informed choice. All right? And ito, I don't know, maybe it's a little too late for this, pero related kasi siya dun sa toxicity in social media. So the opinion, the opinion is telling us here that we need to talk to real people. No? Online interactions can give us a skewed sense of the world. No? The online world is a place where people are uninhibited. No? They can hide from their screens. They are away from direct criticism. No? They are away from actual sanctions on their behaviors. Anonymous interactions can bring out extremes in our character. No, people can be more cruel, less caring, apathetic, more violent online. So as we detox from social media, it's about time we talk to real people so we can get a different perspective. Having authentic conversations and interactions with real people allows us for the possibility of growth and change for both persons. No? Kaya I think recently nakita ng mga Pilipino yung kahalagahan pa rin ng face-to-face campaigning, no? Because it's a really different world out there. no, in real life. No, you get to understand why your jeepney driver, no, your waiter, um, your helper, for instance, has their belief set, no, because they have very unique experiences, no, they form their opinions based on their own experiences. So, getting to know that, getting to have a glance at that is very much enlightening. We increase our openness, our tolerance for differences, and develop more empathy. Only in such conversations can we see both differences and similarities in our views. I'm pretty sure, no, we all every group has stereotypes of the others, no, and it's only by genuinely talking and conversing with people that we go beyond those stereotypes and actually understand where people are coming from and see us in a more multifaceted way. No? Um, so yeah, unlike the silos we put ourselves online. And lastly, let's remind ourselves that our vote has a lot of meanings imbued in it. It's very meaningful. No? It's the behavior that voting is something that expresses our rights as part of this country, not as citizens of the state. It informs, it tells us about our principles, not our values. Um, it tells us that we are invested, no? We are taking stock in the future of our nation. So yeah, we should be proud of our votes. No? We should be uh, delighted that we have this right, which is also a responsibility at the same time. So, so yun, as you step into the precinct, as you step into a classroom to vote on Monday, always remind yourself that your vote is meaningful. No? That whatever the outcome of the election will be, no, yung boto mo is a testament on what you can do for your country, what you want to do to have a better country in the future, no, or in the immediate future. So, yeah, I don't know if that really helped in relieving our anxiety and stress about these elections, but it really put things into perspective and um, yeah, yeah, it really put things into perspective. Well, at least for me, I hope it does to you as well. So yeah, and if you want the whole piece, the whole opinion article, you can visit Inquirer. I think the title is Election Self-Care. So yeah, and it's by one of my professors. She is a clinical psychologist who is actually a certified psychologist, a specialist in yan, yung radical acceptance, yung acceptance and commitment therapy, and I think dialectical behavior therapy. So yan, parang na rin siyang nagpo-promote na rin ako na, psychology is not just about individual problems. You can also apply it to make sense of larger systemic social issues and problems that we encounter, not just as individuals but as collectives. Yun. Do you have any questions? Or do you have any opinions or comments or feedback um, about what I just shared? No? Obviously, it's a little deviation from that, but definitely you can still infuse or you can still find some statistics in it. No, I think that most of our topics serendipitously, is that the right term? Parang it touched on the elections, no? And I think we did it in a very classy way, no, without having to. without me, for example, forcing my vote on yours to you guys or something like that, or um engaging in mudslinging then just to make a point, no? So yeah, we did that for this semester, and I'm quite proud of us. We made it relevant to what is happening around us. Yun. Um, any questions? Wala naman. Uh, okay. Balik ako dun sa ANOVA and sa Chi-Square. Do you have any questions for ANOVA and Chi-Square? Before I briefly introduce to you the next lesson, which is the second to the last lesson for the course. Go ahead. You can type your questions. Tapos, wait pala, I made a poll earlier. Okay, so let me end this poll. So most of you have not started. I understand it was quite late. Nagbigay ako ng problem set. You still have a few days. No? You have more than a week pa to do it. And yun, if you're more comfortable doing it with a pair or a trio, then I'm allowing you to do that. Okay. Oops. Yeah, so that's the result. Meron nang isa nag-start and then the rest have not started. Okay, if you don't have questions about ANOVA and Chi-Square, always remember na I'm just uh, an email away. No, if you have questions on how to go about the problem set, no, if something is confusing, I'll be glad to answer them, as soon as I read your email or your message. All right. Okay, so very quick, I'll introduce you a new topic before I let you go. Do you see my PowerPoint? Right now, it should say part 3 inferential statistics. Anyone can please confirm to me that I've shared the right slide? Yep. Thank you, Tin. So for the past few weeks, no, since I took over the class, we've dealt with a lot of inferential statistics. And I did this morning, trying to recap ano na ba yung mga na-cover natin, ano na ba yung nasubukan yung sagutan, gawin. And it's been quite a lot for such a short amount of time. And proud. No? So we've gone through probability theory and these related topics, parameter estimation, hypothesis testing more recently. Actually, we just finished, no, with the problem set 3 that basically puts yan yung culmination ng hypothesis testing, with the portions and the chi-square test. Then this was part 3 of the course, which is on inferential statistics. Okay, so I hope you've learned quite a lot about inferential statistics, even with the constraints brought about by the setup, our limited time. No? But now we will be introducing a new part. No? This is part 4, actually the last part of our course, which we call bivariate analysis. And we will focus on 3 major topics for this part. The first one is correlation, and which will be followed by other types of correlation, except non-parametric measures of correlation. So for this one, we will be dealing with first with parametric correlation. No, statistical techniques for interval level data. So yan, I don't know if I can really go through this one by one today kasi I'll mabilisan lang. So, I'll try. So, uh, our part 4 starts with correlation, which is basically a technique that we use if we want to measure and describe not just one variable, but two. If you notice in the previous lessons, when we give a sample problem, no, or when you answer the problem set, usually isang variable lang yung pinag-aaralan nyo, right? Isang variable lang yung ginagamit to explain something. No? So, whether that be intelligence, kung nagamit to depression, tapos recently stress, ano ba, yung life expectancy. Now, notice isang variable lang yun. For correlation, we need more than one. We need two. No? Kasi nga, correlation is correlationship. You want to find out the relationship between two variables. And what is unique about correlation is you arrive at a measurement of these variables through naturalistic means. Ibig sabihin, you're not employing any manipulation, no, to the to measure people in these variables. In short, you're not doing an experiment when you do a correlation. No? Because that's the number one thing about experiments. It's you need to manipulate your IV, no, vary it, diba? Dose 1, dose 2, dose 3, or experimental group 1 and then control group. For correlation, what is naturally out there in the social world is what is relevant. No, it's what you're interested in. So for instance, yung data gathering technique mo lang dito will be observation, interview, survey. No, you just ask people what is their age, what is their height, what is their socioeconomic status, what is their income. Yeah, very plain and simple. You're not manipulating anything there. No, you're not doing or conducting an experiment when you do a correlational research. Now, usually, when we do correlations, your score, an individual score on the two variables are represented as X and Y. I would assume that this is quite familiar with you guys because in high school and senior high, you encountered X and Y a lot, right? And we're basically using it now for social stat. So ito ganito, usually this is how correlational studies work. So you have individuals, no, pwedeng randomly sampled or non-random sampling. Now, if you want to test the significance of your correlation, then you need to conduct hypothesis testing again. No? You need to test the significance of the correlation that you will compute. So dapat random yung sample mo, randomly selected. But if not naman, like for instance ngayon, if I conduct a correlation asking about family income and your ziwalaseng, yun lang yung gagamitin ko. Non-random na yun, but I can still do correlation. So ito yun, we have participants or respondents, and then you measure and record their scores, interval level, on the two variables that you are interested in your study. So for instance, in this example, it's family income and the average grade of the student. No? So interval level lahat yan. ito in $1,000 and then ito in grades. And then usually to make sense of the data more, um, researchers usually come up with a scatter plot, no, or a scatter diagram, right? Now, to visually represent the data, to graphically represent the data, you do a scatter plot. And each point here, no, the red dots, represent one person that was part of your sample. No? And then, as you can see, the horizontal line here is the x-axis. This is where your x variable is will be located, or will be measured. And then the y-axis is the y variable, that you want to correlate with your x variable. Okay, so from this, from this simple diagram, you can already describe the data, what if a correlation might exist. And as you can see, mukha naman. From a quick visual inspection, you can see na parang there's sort of a positive relationship between family income and students' average grade. When I say positive, mukhang positive yung relationship kasi if you observe each data, it seems that as family income increases, students' grade also increases. So that's a positive relationship or positive correlation. Okay. So this is what I want you to remember. When we're doing correlation, the most common function of a correlation is to measure straight line relationships. No, yung kanina, if I draw an invisible straight line here, you will understand why I say that it looks like there's a positive correlation here. No? Kasi if I draw an imaginary straight line surrounding these dots, parang sumusunod, parang fit yung mga dots dun sa straight line. No? Of course, merong ibang mga points, merong ibang mga persons na malayo dun sa straight line. Pero more or less, they are clustered around the straight line. Okay? And that's the use of correlation usually, to define and to describe a straight line relationship. No? Yeah. But there are other forms of relationship. You should know this from your intermediate algebra in high school, that aside from a straight line, there are others that exist. So for instance, in correlation, there's also what you call a curvilinear correlation, wherein you still have two variables, but as one variable increases, the other variable increases as well until the relationship is reversed, such that yung isang variable will decrease as we move forward. No? So a quick example of that is age and television view. That when we were younger, when people were younger, they had a tendency to watch television more. No, they spend more hours watching the TV when they were younger. But as soon as they reach a certain age, so here in the graph, around age 30 something to 40 something, medyo nag-dip, no? Until they reach the tail ends of their life and then mag-increase ulit. So that's an example of a curvilinear correlation. No? But for our purposes, we will focus more on the straight line relationship. All right. So problem set, and my examples, it's more a straight line relationship. Ito, very quickly lang, I'll just provide you with a more in-depth discussion of the characteristics of a relationship. And mind you, we are talking about relationship between X and Y, no? Relationship between variables, not a relationship with your X and your Y, your Ys. So tatlo, we need three indices to characterize a relationship. First is existence. No, the simple question here is, does X and Y variable have an association or no association? Alright, so yun lang. Yun lang tinatanong ng existence. Kung may association, definitely you will be computing a value that is greater than or less than 0. If no association, your computed correlation should equal to 0. The relationship does not exist. 0. All right. Second is direction. We're not satisfied with existence. We know after we answer, does the relationship exist or not? It exists. We are not satisfied with that. Hindi pwedeng alam lang natin na may correlation, na may relationship tong dalawang ito. We need to know the degree of the relationship. No? Kung saan papunta yung relationship at kung gaano kalakas yung relationship, kung gaano ka-consistent yung relationship. So that's why we also need to learn about the direction of the relationship. Is the relationship of X and Y positive or negative? So here we will rely on the sign of whatever you compute as the correlation. Kung positive siya, then it's a positive relationship. If it's negative, it's a negative sign, then it's a negative relationship. Okay? Also, yung positive na correlation na tinatawag, it just means na yung change in one variable X, pareho yung fashion or pareho yung trend for the changes in variable Y. No? So you can think of it this way. As X increases, there's a tendency for Y to also increase in the same manner and in the same direction. So that's a positive relationship. Another positive relationship is if X decreases, then Y also decreases. That's a positive relationship still kasi pareho yung direction nila ng pag-change. No? When we say, on the other hand, that it's a negative relationship, what we are implying here is that it's an inverse relationship. So as X increases, Y decreases. Or yung kabaliktaran, as Y increases, X decreases. So that's a negative relationship. That's an inverse correlation. Okay? The last one is the strength or consistency of the relationship. Is the correlation between X and Y weak or strong? I just mentioned to you the idea of the straight line relationship. And yung sa data, sa scatter plot or sa scatter diagram, ang tinatanong ng strength and consistency is this. Yung data natin, when we plot it, no, does it fit perfectly on the straight line? So yun yung consistency. Yun yung strength. No, na perfect correlation ba siya? Ibig sabihin, when you draw an invisible line there, an imaginary line there, lahat ng data points mo, no, each person that you measured on these two variables will occupy the line, no, and will form a straight line. So that's what you call a perfect correlation. No? But the thing is, in actual research, no, oh God, I can't believe I'm still using this as an example years later, pero in research, in statistical research, and in real relationships, rarely do we find a perfect relationship. Now, perfect relationships don't usually exist. There's an almost perfect relationship, pero mahirap makahanap ng perfect relationship. Okay? So yeah, ganun din dito. So, it's rare for us to find a data point will fit the straight line so perfectly. But we will find a lot of studies, a lot of variables, a lot of correlations na sobrang malapit that they resemble a straight line. And usually, that's enough. We're happy about that already. No? Madali na siyang intindihin kapag ganun. Yeah. So ito yung sinasabi ko. So here, sa A, this is a perfectly negative correlation. No? As X increases, Y decreases. So yan. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data points, no? 7 people that were measured on 2 variables. And for some reason, they perfectly fit this straight line relationship. As opposed to B, where all the data points are scattered all over the diagram. It tells us that there is no linear trend for these two variables, X and Y. No? We can't decipher any pattern, no, any trend, no. So wala silang correlation. So if we will compute the correlation coefficient of this particular X and Y variables, 0 ang makukuha mo. As opposed to dito, this perfectly negative correlation, ang makukompute mo dito is a -1. Alright? Yung C naman, ito yung sinasabi ko na perfection rarely exists in correlation. But we can find strong positive relationships. Just like this, diba? If I draw a straight line here, it's almost as if the data points are clustered around the straight line. Now, malapit na silang mag-form ng straight line. So this is a strong positive relationship. So if you compute it, should be around 0.85, 0.90. Yan tong magiging itsura ng data set mo. And lastly, a relatively weak negative correlation. As you can see, parang you can still picture the imaginary line here na pababa siya. So it's a negative correlation, but it's a weak one because medyo magkakalayo yung data points mo. But still, you can sort of decipher a pattern there as opposed to B na sobrang sabog ng data set mo. All right? So for our class, let's try to have uniformity once again. So in computing, later, I have not given you any formula for correlation and the various other measures of correlation, but in general, we will use this. To numerically express the direction, the strength, and consistency, and of course, the existence of correlation, we will use this because correlations range between -1 and +1. But -1, perfectly negative correlation, but +1, perfect positive correlation. And as I've said, 0 is no correlation or no association. Pag malapit sa 1 on both ends, that's a strong correlation. No? As the value moves further away from 1, mas humihina yung correlation. All right. Okay. Last 3 points before we end. Oops. I want you to remember this as you do the problem set, and as you encounter correlations in thesis. In interpreting correlations, the first thing that we need to remember is that correlation informs us about something. It tells us about the relationship between X and Y variables, right? But correlation does not mean causation. No, a correlation will not tell you if there's a cause and effect there between the variables. No, it can't tell you that X causes Y or Y causes X. It just tells you a trend, no, in the data, in their relationship, that as X increases, Y increases, or as X increases, Y decreases. Hindi siya if then, no? Mas hindi gano'n ka-sophisticated yung information na mabibigay sa'yo ng correlation. No? So it cannot and should not be interpreted as a proof of a causal relationship or a cause and effect relationship between two problems. No? Kasi there are certain problems that we will encounter if we do that. First is the directionality problem. No? This is not a question, parang siyang question ng sino ang nauna, chicken or egg. No? Hindi natin alam kung sino ang mauuna between X and Y. If X did cause Y or did Y cause X. No? So there's a directionality problem there. So you can't assume and interpret causation. Then there's what you call tertium quid. What is that? That's Latin, which when you translate it into English, it means a third thing, a third object. No? In research, that's a third variable. No? So as much as we want to study just two variables, once again, life is not perfect. No, we are not in an idealized version of the world. So kahit na dalawa lang inaaral nating variables, we need to be mindful that other factors, no, intervening and extraneous variables exist. And another variable could be explaining the relationship between the two. May pumapagitna dun sa dalawang variables which strengthens the relationship or which weakens the relationship. No? So that's tertium quid. So an example, for instance, yung kanina, family income is related to students' grades. No? So this is a correlational statement, no? A statement of the relationship between variable X and variable Y. But we can't say that. It's not the same as saying that family income causes students' grades or family income causes high student grades. We can't say that for certain. No? Why? Kasi pwedeng may tertium quid, no? May third intervening or extraneous variable affecting the relationship of the two. And in fact, there is. No? Baka naman intelligence, no? Yung intelligence ng estudyante ang third variable that could explain why mataas yung income ng family tapos mataas din yung grades. So you can explain it in such a way that perhaps yung intelligence ng student is being bolstered, no? Parang nabu-boost because of the family's income. Kasi mataas ang income mo, you will have the resources, both material and psychosocial resources that will help the child have good grades. No? So I can provide you with tutors, I can provide you with all the gadgets, the books, all the trainings, no? Because of the high income of the parent. No? But we cannot say the family income causes students high grades. No? Kasi if you think about it this way, kapag ba na-promote, for instance, si dad, no, as the CEO of the company, bigla bang tataas ang grades mo? No? Suddenly ay magiging 1 na lahat ng grades mo. Of course, there's a possibility, pero it does not necessarily follow. No? So yun. Another consideration is, we are naturally observing the variables in its purest form in the social world. We are not conducting a true experiment where we can manipulate and isolate these variables, right? I think I mentioned that when I discussed the repeated measures t-test, no? There are context effects, yung mga ganun. We try to standardize everything. So yung experiment, nagagawa niya yun. No? An experiment can account for that, can control for that. But for naturalistic observations, you can't. You can't manipulate the variables, and therefore mas mahirap mag-establish ng causation. Unlike in a true experiment where the variables are isolated, so now you can be a little more confident that um, you've removed any outside influences, mga ganyan. Okay? In statistics, there's what you call partial correlation. Sometimes, no, you're really invested in figuring out the degree of relationship between two variables. So what you want to do is control the influence of a third variable by holding it constant. So this is a formula actually that you can do to control for the third variable or tertium quid. Now, so for instance, yung sa example ko na family income is related to students' grade. So what I can do is when I plug in my data in a software, for instance, I can control for the effects of intelligence. I can control for, let's say, I'm hypothesizing that the tertium quid for this example is actually gender. So I'll control gender. Parang lumabas lang sa results ko is the actual correlation between family income and students' grades. So yun, no? Another example which is quite amusing is there in the US, no? Na-observe nila that there is a correlation between the number of churches being built and rising up in certain cities and the occurrence of many crimes. No? So there's a positive relationship or a positive correlation between growth in churches and higher crime rates. Now, if you turn this into a cause and effect relationship, it's very damaging, no? And it's very dangerous and scary. No? Because you can interpret it as, so, kapag mas dumadami ang churches sa isang lugar, somewhere in the US, mas tumataas ang crime. Therefore, churches causes crime. Many churches causes crime. So I don't know what will happen to these places, no? Baka ipagbawal ang church, no? And that can step on people's religious freedoms, right? Ang bawal ng church kasi it causes higher crime rates. When in fact, hindi causation ito. It's just correlation. It happens that pag maraming church, marami ding crimes. And what a study found out is the tertium quid or the third variable affecting the relationship of these two variables, yung churches at saka yung crime, is actually the increase in the population size. No? And it makes sense, right? Kaya tumataas ang mga krimen at kaya rin tumataas ang dumadami ang mga simbahan sa isang place. Mas dumadami na yung tao doon. So you need to accommodate more churchgoers. And because dumadami ang tao, dumadami rin, mas nagiging diverse din yung population. And therefore, mas nahahaluan ng mga criminal intent, no? So, ganun. Okay. Second to the last point. Correlation is greatly affected by the range of scores represented in the data. I think I've given this as a feedback in general to you guys now. Let's try to not overgeneralize when we state our conclusions. And we need to stick to the facts. We need to stick to the facts and be more context specific. Kasi nga, a problem that can happen is this. No? Yung correlation, for instance, because of a restricted range, could be overblown, no? Could be inflated because of a restricted range. So Be conscious when interpreting correlation computed from scores that do not represent the full range of possible values. So for instance, in this example, in this scatter plot, ano actually ito, a researcher was correlating intelligence with creativity. But the problem that they encountered is restricted yung range ng respondents nila. Meaning, ang pinag-aralan lang nila, ang sinama lang nila sa study is a certain demographic. I think college students lang, which is halos pare-pareho ang IQ, no? Pero iba-iba yung creativity level. So when you isolate the group and see the relationship of the variables using that group, you will find that there's no correlation between intelligence and creativity. No? So if this is a hypothesis testing, nireject na nila yung prevailing hypothesis that higher intelligence is correlated with higher creativity. No? And that is because that is a flaw in their methodology. Na college students are very restricted lang yung participants. When in fact, when you expand the range of the possible values of X and Y, just in this case, no, look at the entire scatter plot. Sinama na nila yung may average intelligence, sinama nila yung non-college students, then no, you will see the strong positive correlation that is already established between intelligence and creativity. So yan, ganoon din tayo dito. When you guys do your thesis, be context specific, no? Be very upfront about who you want as participants, and then stick to the generalizations about them. No, don't try to stretch your interpretation, your analysis to such a point na nag-overgeneralize na kayo tungkol sa ibang population. No? Once again, that's a methodological flaw, and at the same time, that's unethical. No? Na nang damay pa kayo just so that it looks good on paper, it looks good for your results, it looks good for your analysis. When, you could be impacting a lot of people's lives because of your overgeneralization. Yun. And last point, outliers. I think I've mentioned this twice or thrice before in class that there are outliers in research, no, in statistics, and they can really have a dramatic effect on the value of a correlation or any statistic for that matter. No, I hope you saw that in your descriptive stats, for instance. No, when nakita natin yun sa normal curve, right? Yung mga outliers, yung mga sobrang tataas or sobrang bababa ng scores, such that they are very unlikely to be drawn from the population. No, they are not clustered around the population mean. No, so the general characteristic of the population, so malayo sila. So kapag nasama sila sa correlation study mo, it could inflate once again the results. No, inflate or deflate the results. So an outlier is an individual with an X and or Y value that are substantially different from the values obtained for the other individuals in the data set. So let's see. For instance, ito, look at B and the scatter plot. This is, no, hindi na specify yung variable, pero basically the outlier here is this guy. So nasa taas siya. For him alone, the relationship that his score represents is that as X increases, Y also increases. No? And because sobrang outlier niya, sobrang unexpected, sobrang exceptional niya, nahila niya yung the rest of the data points, no? The rest of the respondents, such that when you graph the data points, it looks as though they form a straight line, no, or they approximate a straight line relationship. When in fact, when you remove this outlier and sila na lang matitira here, wala talagang relationship between X and Y. No? They're scattered all over. No, merong iba na as X increases, Y increases. Yung iba naman as X decreases, Y increases. Yung iba naman as X increases, Y decreases. So yun, as you might question, is it valid na so meron akong respondent na sobrang exceptional sa X and Y, but I removed him from my data. Is that allowed? Yes, but with certain limits. No, there is a procedure that you can follow. There is a formula that you can use to figure out your outliers and remove them from your data in a valid way, in a valid manner, that you won't be questioned for scientific fraud, no, falsifying the data, falsifying your results. So yeah, it's a common thing. I think I mentioned it dun sa mga nag-attend last time, yung data cleaning, no? So I wasn't able to record it last time, pero I showed the two sections of stat that I'm handling. I showed your mean, your standard deviation for problem set 1 and problem set 2. And before data cleaning, kasi I had many data points that were 0 because they have not yet submitted their work. So yun, nahila pababa yung mean tsaka yung standard deviation. But when I did the data cleaning, nag-improve yung descriptive statistics ng both class. So that's data cleaning. But then pa rin dito sa correlation, there are certain procedures that you can follow to account for outliers, no, and remove them from your data set if you feel like it will improve the analysis and it will be a more realistic rendering interpretation of the data. All right. With that said, I think this is the end for my intro. I will be providing you the learning materials for correlation in the succeeding lessons, no? Just in time for our last sync session this coming Saturday. All right. So, do you have any questions so far? Stuck na lang kayo. Meron ba kayong tanong? Do you want to consult with me? This is your chance. Tin, Shay, Gabby, meron ba? All right. So yeah, how about Shay and Gabby? Okay naman. All right. Okay, kung ganon, continue answering problems. No, find a partner, find a trio. And yun, I'll be available online, no, through email and the chat if you need some help, if you need to answer questions for you. All right. So yeah, thank you so much. If wala na, we can end here. Medyo maaga tayong mag-dismiss. Yan. We have our last sync session next week. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you so much. Gabby, are you still here? Uh, Leave now, okay?